the Latino Leadership Network DI Subcommittee Lunch and Learn on Boards and Commissions. We're very excited to have you here, and hopefully you will walk away with an interest in LLN, DEI, or boards and commissions. So I'm Javita Ramirez. I work at Healthcare Authority in the Office of Tribal Affairs, and I'm the LLN DEI Subcommittee co-chair. I'm excited for today's Lunch and Learn on the Washington State Boards and Commissions, and we have a very awesome panel that Steve Kammer, which I'm probably saying your name wrong, last name wrong, will introduce to all of you shortly. And I just wanted to cover some of the housekeeping items, and then I'm going to share a message from our executive sponsor, Alfie Alvarado, who couldn't be here to join us, but she wanted to be. But I will read the message she had for us. And, oh, that's not gonna work. Well, I thought we had it figured out. It did not work. So I will just read the housekeeping. Please mute yourself. Up in entry, the Lunch and Learn is being recorded. Questions and comments can be submitted using the chat feature. And the last one is, if you want to learn, or if you want to be part of LLN or be included in the LLN newsletter distribution, please put your email in the address, your email address on the chat feature, or email us at the lln@ofm.wa.gov. And I will have a slide with that information at the end of the Q&A. Oh, Monica says she's having technical difficulties, so hopefully she'll join us. And so I will next read Alfie's message to everyone here. Alfie Alvarado is the Department of Veterans Affairs Director and also our LLN executive sponsor, or madrina, as we say in Spanish. Alfie does not like the spotlight or to take it away from LLN, but I feel it's worth mentioning a few things about our amazing sponsor, Alfie. Alfie was born in Puerto Rico and served 22 years in active duty, retiring as the Command Sergeant Major of the Madigan Army Medical Center and Troop Command, Joint Base Lewis McChord. She is a member of Governor Jay Inslee's executive cabinet and chairs the Washington Military Transition Council. She's a member of the Governor's Results Washington Design Team, which addresses the effective delivery of state services to Washingtonians. Alfie is the recipient of many military honors and awards, to include the Governor's Distinguished Management Leadership Award and the Department of Veteran Affairs Secretary's Leadership Award. She is currently serving as the president of the National Association of State Directors of Veteran Affairs. There's more to it, but I had to cut it short. So here's the message from our executive sponsor, Alfie. She says, "Buenos dias, familia. Good morning, family. My sincere apology for not being with you today, but I am on a flight to Puerto Rico as this Lunch and Learn is taking place. Today's topic, boards and commissions, is near and dear to my heart. I am delighted that the LLN leadership is looking beyond our workplaces to give our Latino workforce a broader sense of community and service. We had conversations about the value of applying for and getting selected to serve on governor's boards and commissions a long time ago. It seems that the time is now to spring into action. While there have been efforts to bring diversity to such bodies, we feel the Latino and other minority groups' voices are still missing. Bringing talented, curious, and eager members like you to our boards and commissions will not only bring representation that looks like our community, but also our perspectives, experiences, and ideas. There are hundreds of opportunities in areas that span education, engineering, the environment, college and universities, safety, health, veterans, and many more. Most boards have professional occupational members, but also positions called general public. This could be you. If you follow your passion and do your research, you could serve your state in a whole different way while still a state employee. You will hear today more on what this entails and urge you to consider applying for these opportunities and to ask questions of the panel during the Q&A after their presentation. Have a great lunch and learn, and thank you for your attendance. So that is from our executive sponsor, Alfie Alvarado. I will now introduce Steve Kammerer, sorry, Steve, from DES and my DEI subcommittee co-chair. And I don't want to forget to mention that Marta Araña is also in the DEI subcommittee. So I will introduce, or Steve will introduce the boards and commission panel for today's Lunch and Learn.
Thank you, Jovita. Ambar Aljera is the director for boards and commissions. Ambar worked in boards and commissions since 2019. Ambar has a number of years of experience in management operations. Alejandro, or Ale Sanchez, works for Governor Inslee on immigration-related matters and has been a state employee for over 8 years, including as the vice chair of the Board of Tax Appeals. Maria Sigüenza is the director for Commission on Hispanic Affairs. She has been a state employee for 7 years, having worked at 3 other agencies, those being Healthcare Authority, Department of Social and Health Services, or DSHS, and the Department of Licensing. And with that, I will turn it over, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Steve, for having us. Can you hear me? Am I good to go? Okay, great. All right, perfect. Yeah, no, thank you so much for having us. This is a really important topic. It's of great interest to the governor to continue to promote diversity throughout the state workforce. It's the best way to get great results for all the people who live in our state and have everyone be included. Before we wanted to go around, and Maria and Ambar and I will just kind of ask each other questions in an informal panel, and then we'll definitely have some time for questions from the group. I wanted to thank you first, Steve, for the introduction, but I also wanted to have Maria and Ambar and myself give a little bit more background of how we've come to be involved with boards and commissions and what our roles really entail now. So I'll start. Maria, can you kick us off and give us a sense of how you ended up with boards and commissions, what you're serving on, and just a little bit more background there? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ale. You know, as Steve had mentioned, I have worked across the enterprise for the last about 7.5 years, and I've had various roles across the state. Most of them have been related to access. So I started off in the Healthcare Authority doing Medicaid processing for what is, I consider, a horribly named program, the Alien Emergency Medical Program. And I was there really fulfilling an important role in making sure that those who were applying for that program and were Spanish speaking actually had the ability to talk to a human. For this program, in order to be eligible, you had to have a dire medical emergency. And if we had questions, just imagine being a monolingual individual, not knowing the language, having a really scary medical event, being able to actually have that phone conversation with somebody that understood you is definitely one of those pressures that, while small, is pretty significant. And so that's how I started. That's how I got my foot in the door with the state. And I just progressed doing more language access work and eventually equity-based work, which really ties into what the commission does, which is really centered in access. Nowhere in our mission does it say that we work on equity or on access, but really that is our core mission. We help with the development of public policy and the delivery of government services with a Latino perspective in mind. So we are here to identify, to examine issues, and then articulate them so that we can form a recommendation to the state as to what needs changing. So we're an advisory body. And we advise just 3 entities across the state. It's the legislature, the governor, and state agencies. So I really bring the perspective of board and commission in terms of what we do. But I am really excited to introduce Ambar to you and ask a little bit more as to how she got involved with the boards and commissions. Oh, and you're on mute.
What about now? No.
Perfect.
Sorry, I apologize. So my name is Ambar. I am the director for boards and commissions. I actually got involved with boards and commissions because I actually applied for a position with CHOP. So that's how I ended up getting involved with boards and commissions. And it went from being in the coordinator for boards and commissions into the director role. And a lot of my responsibilities is making sure that we are, when we're making appointments, that we're appointing the right individuals into the commissions. It's one of those two where people, when they apply for certain positions, and we happen to see maybe they're a better fit in other commissions, we try to see if we can, you know, get them onto this other spot that might be a better fit. So I'm kind of like the puzzle person trying to fit everything together. But that's pretty much my role in boards and commissions. How about you, Ale?
Yeah, thanks, Ambar. So I came to the state directly from private practice, and I ended up being an employee of the Board of Tax Appeals as one of their administrative law judges. And I worked there for a few years and ultimately was asked to apply for one of the 3 board positions. And so I did, and I was very fortunate to get one of those positions, and held that for only a year and a half, I believe, but only because I got offered this better opportunity at the governor's office, which has been very fortunate to work with such a great team and work on some really important issues around immigration and immigrants in our state. So, but that was not a knock on the board itself, but this is my passion now, what I'm doing. And so I did have some time though to really understand what it means to serve on a board. And so, yeah, that's why they asked me to come back, because I've been involved historically with the Latino Leadership Network and do have that board member experience. So again, I'm really thankful to be here today. And so we just wanted to make sure people knew why we were on the panel, so that you didn't think we were imposters for any reason. We do have some basis here. And I want to go ahead and like I said, we're just going to kind of, as a panel, just ask each other some questions so that we can flesh that out and you know, have you all hear more about what the process is to begin, what it means to have Latinos, Latinas, and Latinx individuals involved in boards and commissions, and then also to just kind of, you know, share some of our own insights, really, of just what it's been like for us. I guess I'll start and just kind of go to Ambar and say, you know, we are here to promote diversity on these boards and commissions. So, you know, what's the current status of diversity, and how does the governor feel about that, and where do we want to be?
So as far as diversity, that is something that we are working on. As far as percentage of the Hispanic community or Latino community in Washington, we're roughly about 7% in regards to appointments of our total appointments since Governor Inslee has been in office. So that is definitely something that the governor has in regards to priority, is making sure that we have a diverse candidates serving on boards and commissions, because we want to make sure that people's voices are being heard, and that everyone knows not everyone's experience on everything is the same. So it's definitely a big priority for our office and the governor's, is to diversify our boards and commissions, and definitely we want to make sure we get those numbers up.
And Ambar, so we know we're lower on the Latinx involvement. Do we have any sort of anecdotal data or anecdotes as to why that might be? What's driving that? Do we know?
A lot of it is just people are not actually applying. People are not actually applying for these positions. I think a lot of that is people are automatically disqualifying themselves. People are just generally thinking, well, if it's a nursing quality care commission, it has to be someone from nursing has to be involved or someone with experience in nursing. That's not the case. It just depends on the actual position. A lot of the positions, like Alfie stated in her, in her statement, are general public. So it's someone who's actually interested in this subject or has some type of experience where they can bring in their, okay, these are the troubles or the situations that I've come across, and they can be that voice of the general public. Also, if they have that requirement, that job specific requirement, they can apply as well. And that's something that we definitely want people to do, is to apply. Even if you think that you're not quite qualified, don't automatically think that because you think there's people that are more qualified for the position, so therefore I shouldn't apply. Don't do that. Apply. It's one of those where we review the applications. We look to see, okay, what exactly do we need? And people end up thinking, well, they're disqualifying themselves automatically, and they could be surprised of the actual potential and actual opportunity to be able to serve. So the big one is people not actually applying.
And I'll jump in really quickly to talk about why it's so important to have a diverse board or have a diverse boards and commissions program. So we think, we have the ethnic commissions. We've got Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs. We've got Commission on African American Affairs, Hispanic Affairs. And I have come across folks that say, yeah, well, I do consider myself a diverse candidate, but I don't necessarily have any interest in serving on the ethnic commissions. And so that's a point for me to say, what kind of interest do you have? Boards and commissions are, there's how many, Ambar? I want to say maybe like over 200 different kinds of boards and commissions.
There's roughly right now, and mind you, every year it grows too. So right now with boards and commissions, task force, work groups, we have well over 320.
Oh my gosh. So I've even been saying the number too low. So we've got over 300 different opportunities whereby somebody can provide their perspective. The Commission on Hispanic Affairs obviously is very much honed in on the perspective of Latinos. And that's even in and of itself a really broad perspective, but we can hone in specifically, like I know that there's a potato commission, right? There's like nursing commissions, medical commissions, commissions on like transportation related topics. Some of them are paid, some of them are just volunteer status, but there's plenty of opportunities to come in as a member of our community, as a member of Washington State, and say, in respect to this specific topic, these are the issues that I see, or these are the gaps that I see, and these are ideas that I have. Amber is saying that there's about 7% of Latinos on the board. Our whole population of Latinos in Washington State is at 13%. So we're maybe a little bit over half of what our actual representation should be. And so just in your position as you're listening to us talking, I would like for you to just think about, like, what are the areas that I feel really comfortable like having a conversation about? Like, go onto the website and take a look at the boards and commissions lists and see if there's a topic that you're really well versed in, that you might be a general member for, or you might be an attorney that can fill in a seat and apply. Because that perspective is really what is important with these boards and commissions. So Ale, a question for you. What is the broader outlook for the state in continuing to improve diversity in all areas of representation?
That's a great question, Maria. if you look at Washington along the spectrum of all the other states with regard to advocacy and results for immigrant populations, Latino populations, populations of color generally, I feel very good about many of the places that we're landing. We have a really good approach toward the immigrants in our state, I think. There's plenty of room for improvement, of course, but we are a welcoming state, and there are all kinds of examples throughout of places where our state has gone further. For the Latino population as an example, that other states wouldn't be able to do. They wouldn't have the power to do. And a great example is what's happened with farm worker overtime. And that is an issue that was a long issue. It had racial underpinnings to the overtime exclusion for farm workers. Farm workers now in this state are predominantly Latino. And you had a Supreme Court in this state that was willing to take that on, that kind of issue on, which is a very charged issue. And they were able to come to a decision that furthers that development of farm workers throughout the state. That's just one example. There are lots of other things like the immigrant relief funds that have come out that are nation leading, and just a lot of effort from the top, from the governor, from the legislature, and from the Supreme Court. And if you think about who's taking the lead on many of these efforts, they are Latino men and women in the legislature and the courts, et cetera. And that's the sort of overall picture of what we can hope for in this state. But, you know, if you focus exclusively on the legislature and the Supreme Court or the governor's office, you're missing out on all the staff people at our agencies and all of the boards and commissions which have independent authority to make decisions, make recommendations, spend money, and regulate the state essentially. And there's a lot of room there for the efforts that we see from those high-ranking officials to flow through and provide an excellent example for how this state can take lead on progressive measures toward, you know, ultimately getting much more involvement, much more representation, much more equity and parity across everyone in the state, regardless of their ethnicity, immigration status, et cetera. And that's our drive. But the Commission on Hispanic Affairs is not omniscient. They have the work that they're able to do in the amount of time that they have to do that. And to have Latinos everywhere else is how we really achieve that representation. And the Commission can focus on very important projects that they can do. But without Latinos on these other boards, it's just quietly moving forward without that perspective. So I think that's really what I would say is, you know, the proof is in the pudding. If you compare this state and some of the major developments that have happened over the past 10 years, you will be very pleased, I think. And it's a great effort forward, but it's not over. And you still need that drive from younger people coming up with the visions of how to better support their communities and advocate for their communities, and have people to talk to that have the power to make change. And this is precisely the spot. I should also say that we're talking about boards and commissions. There are people on these boards and commissions that are also in these other positions of power too. So these are people that are in the state system. They are making decisions. They move on to become legislators. They move on to work in our state agencies elsewhere. They're also, you know, major community leaders. So getting everyone involved and active in the space is extremely important. So thank you, Maria. I think what we wanted to do as well, because, you know, we can say how important this is, and I mean, it is extremely important to have more diversity, but we also want to sort of, you know, set aside some myths about what it's like to be on a board or commission, what it's like to apply. Is it this, you know, black box of, you know, you have no idea what you're doing and we don't know how to apply and everything's just sort of distant. So we wanted to talk about that too, and Ambar is perfect for that. And you know, they work very hard in her office to make things simple and straightforward with people. So Ambar, you know, is this a really hard process for people to do? Is it time consuming? Is it really challenging? Or, I mean, is this something that just anyone can do?
Anyone can do. So, but what we do recommend is to, of course, go to the website, you know, read the information about the boards to see if it is actually something that you're interested in. A lot of these boards also have their own independent websites that go into more detail of what exactly that they do and what type of board they are. If they're advisory, rulemaking, and then basically it lets you know what type of board they are. It also goes a little into detail about their previous meetings. So that's always good to kind of read over to see, okay, so this is what they're working on. This is what they've been looking at. So it's always good to just basically kind of do your homework to see, okay, do I really want to invest time into this? Because for some people, it is a true passion. Like they want to make sure that Washingtonians, that's the also thing is, you're on the board, not just to provide your voice, but to basically make Washington a better place for all Washingtonians, everyone. You know, doesn't matter their race, you know, their gender, sexual preference, nothing like that. It's for all Washingtonians. So it's one of those where you, when you do your research, it's like, okay, yes, this is something that I do want to devote time to because it is a time commitment. Depending on the board, it can be something minimal between 3 to 6 hours a quarter that you provide with like actual quote unquote homework and board meetings and subcommittees, again, depending on what the board is and what's going on. Or it can be something that's a little more challenging depending on the board that you would like to be appointed to. Like for instance, the Human Rights Commission. That one's a little more time involvement because there's actual cases that you're reviewing and there's a lot of cases, so that one's a lot more time involvement. Also, depending on the commission, some of these commissions are Senate confirmable. So what that means is the governor makes an appointment and then during legislative session, the Senate actually then confirms you as well. Some of these seats that are Senate confirmable, we do require some additional paperwork to be filled out, which is the Senate questionnaire. So for some people, again, depending on how busy you are, it's just literally just filling out some papers. So it shouldn't take you more in total, probably maybe if you have a lot of stuff to put on, maybe no more than maybe 30, 45 minutes, but it's not really a big time commitment to apply. It really isn't. But those Senate confirmation questionnaires and personal disclosure, financial disclosures come later on. That's when you're actually appointed. As far as like the actual application, if you're interested in a board, we do request that for each board that you're interested in applying, it's an application for each board. So a lot of people, what they'll end up doing is they won't want to go in and fill it in each thing one by one. So they'll just fill in just like the basic information and then attach their resume to provide all the other information that we would need from the application. So that's a good one of, you know, helping to, minimize the time that is required for it. A lot of these boards, once we receive the applications, depending on the board, there are times where there's a recruitment period going on. So some of these recruitment periods could be like, let's say for us, it's usually around this time of year until probably late summer when we're really busy because we're doing a lot of higher education boards. We're doing a lot of Department of Health boards. And also there's a lot of other different boards that a lot of the current members, their terms are coming up. So they're holding recruitments and inviting people to apply. And then once the recruitment ends, that's when we're going through the applications to then schedule meetings, or not meetings, but interviews with these candidates to basically make sure that, again, that there's an actual interest in serving and that they're there for the right reasons. That's the number one thing, is we want to make sure people are there, again, for the right reasons, not just there to, put something on the resume. They're there to actually make a difference. So that's the big thing for us. So it's not so much that it's challenging. It could be for some people, depending again on what board they're looking to serve. There might be some time commitment, but it's not really anything that I think that will really be consuming.
So Ale, I'd be really interested in hearing about your experience serving on a board. You mentioned that you were on the Board of Tax Appeals. What was it like?
Yeah. I mean, it was fascinating work if you're into tax, which most everyone is not. So I won't pretend like you're going to be thrilled by that. But it's important work because that board was focused on taking taxpayer appeals from assessments that they got on property tax and sales tax, and so you know, the taxpayers needed a fair body to hear their side of the story without the board being tied to the Department of Revenue or to any of the counties. So it was a great place to work on providing a neutral, detached, and competent decision-making for these taxpayers. I think what's important though is that this board was a full-time board, and so that, you know, it was basically a job. And that's one way that a board can be. It's not the way that most boards are, but it still had all of the benefits of being on a board. And really what that is having board members that are your colleagues, that you have to work together to further the mission of the commissioner board, right? And so you're going to become close with those people. You're going to work very hard. And I think just the most important takeaway is it's democracy in some regards, right? It's a smaller set of democracy. You're not dictating the outcome. You have to work with your fellow board members to negotiate out positions that are acceptable to everyone. And it's just a really important dynamic to have in your life at some point, I think, just for the experience alone. Setting aside the substantive issues that you ultimately work on, it's also about collaborating with people and getting results out of that collaboration, and learning to vote no on something that two other people are voting yes on, and if that's what you believe in, and learning to vote yes on something that two other people are disparate on, and having to deal with the not being favored to one of your fellow board members or not, and trying to avoid any kind of like politicking or anything along those lines, and really having the opportunity to have above the board honest, candid conversations about the direction of that particular board or commission. And at the end of the day, it does shape people's lives, right? And so for us, the board itself would be making substantive rulings on tax appeals. It would also be deciding the future of how to practice in front of the Board of Tax Appeals, how to make it easier for pro se clients to do so, and how to make sure that the represented parties, came prepared to represent their clients. So those kinds of decisions that the board spent hours and hours laboring over to come up with good answers and good rules was really valuable. It was valuable for me personally to learn how to work in that space, to work with other people to come up to those decisions. And so I had a great time, and I'm still close with those colleagues that I've had at the board. And so it was absolutely a worthwhile experience for me, and really happy that I did it. And Maria, you now have more time logged at the commission than I did at that board. So of anyone being an expert at this point, it's going to be you. And I was not the executive director, and I know that we didn't make the executive director's life always that easy, because you have three people trying to figure things out, and the executive director has to work in that. So you have that perspective, and it'd be great to hear more about what it's like for you as the executive director.
Yeah, I certainly do. One of the things that I love about this role is that every single day is different. And because of that, I will definitely be wary of saying that, I'm an expert in any way, in terms of this commission. Even we've been around for 50 years, and all of the topics are completely different, and I approach it with a learning mindset. But, the role of the executive director, specifically under this commission that's part of the small cabinet that very specifically reports to the Gov's leadership, is is actually really, really fun. There's a lot of politics involved, and there's a lot of relationships involved. And I think the number one thing that I knew coming into this role is that in order to be an effective advisory board, we needed to have those relationships. We needed to keep those relationships with those that we advised to, but also the community and our community leaders and our community members. And so that's a huge task when you're talking about an enterprise, right, of thousands of people. And you're also talking about a population that is a little over 1 million at this point. So you have to, I've learned to approach this job very strategically. We have to make, you know, it can't be realistic that we have contact with every single member of our community across the state. So how I advise our commissioners to operate is to form relationships with the leaders in their community. And oftentimes, you know, if we're doing our job well, we're in the back of the room observing what are the gaps, kind of what are the issues within our community, what do we need. And as I've been here for 3 years, we've had a lot of change in the board. We used to operate as, you know, each individual person is a champion in their community, and I've kind of steered the ship to the point where we're now a team. And the 11-member commission is a team. We are here for our community. We're each still very much champions in our community, but we're not taking the lead, and we're more so being the ears of our community so that folks can come to us, say, this is something that's wrong, or we observe, hey, this is a huge gap that I'm seeing. And we're proactive in reaching out to the rest of our colleagues and saying, do you see this problem? Yes. If the commission identifies a problem, then we all come together and start working on possible solutions, or start, you know, scratching the surface at the enterprise, asking questions. Right now we're doing some gang related conversations, and it's my task to go to the enterprise and say, what's the work that's been done? What have we been doing? What programs exist, so that I can go back to commissioners and say, this is what's going on, and they can identify gaps. So, I mean, it's like that, but multiple topics across the enterprise. So it's thrilling. And I will say, in terms of the commissioners, what makes my job a lot easier is if I have a commission or a commissioner who is very involved and is willing to think outside the box and be really responsive and put the time in, as opposed to, you know, well, you know, here's this problem, figure it out, right? It's the collaboration and it's the camaraderie that we need to build in order to show up strong as a commission for our community. So it's been a lot of fun. But with that, I think we've got about a minute longer, and I wanted to ask Ambar a little bit about successful candidates, like successful applicants, and what you see in applications that jumps out to you that says, yes, this person is great.
I think it's definitely when we find someone who has really is really involved, or not involved, but has a really big interest, or it's something that's really near and dear to them, like a commission that they really, you know, it's an area that they really are a big advocate for, or a big involvement, you know, that they have. It's one of those when someone finds a board that really clicks with them, and it's amazing when people find that. And it's one of those two where people, I think, are a little standoffish about applying because they think, okay, I don't have any experience being on a board or commission. I don't have any experience being in this type of environment. And it's one of those where you don't have to have that experience. A lot of these boards will provide some type of onboarding for you, some type of, like, basically walking you through what the process is. And it's also one of those where you go as you learn. No one's expecting you to just know all of the things right off the bat. It's a learning experience. So it's definitely one of those where you don't have to have some type of experience in boards and commissions or being on a board or anything. It's one of those where we want you to be there because of your voice, because of your experience of whatever, your past involvements or your current occupation is. So it's one of those where as time goes, you get into your rhythm of being a trustee or commissioner. So it's something that does come with the more involvement that you have with your board or commission. So for me, it's definitely one of those where I would say what I like is when we find the right board for someone. It really helps because it gives a new type of, a spark to the new board members, because there's a new person there bringing a new perspective, a new way of thinking. It's also one of those too where people have to realize you don't have to agree with everyone, but you also have to be open to conversations. It's not to automatically close off and be like, no, I don't agree with what you say and that's it. You have to be open to the conversations and you have to be respectful. So it's one of those where we want to make sure that people understand. We want people to feel like they're being heard and that they're being respected in their environment. So it's not one of those where we want to make sure that people understand we're not going to throw you into something and hope that wish for the best. It's no, there's going to be some type of training to bring you up to speed of basically where you're supposed to be at, how things are supposed to go, and it's definitely one of those where I think when people start to find that out, it really just clicks for them.
Amber, I think, thank you for that information. I think we've got one or two questions in the chat from Jessica Gonzalez. She's asking if we already sit on a nonprofit board, how can we confirm whether or not there are any conflicts of interest before applying to a board or commission?
So it definitely depends on the nonprofit that you're sitting on and what board you're applying for. So a lot of it, again, would be going to the boards and commissions website, reading the profile information, and then also going to the board website. I would recommend to then go over what their actual areas are that they're working on to make sure that there is no conflict.
And there was another question earlier that was about mentorship on the boards and commissions. Jessica Armstrong, is there mentoring or coaching opportunities within the commission for some, if not all, to feel more comfortable applying for these positions?
Yes, a lot of these commissions, they basically have like a partner that you partner up with. And some of them actually have or in Maria's case, like a director that actually, helps do an onboarding type of process of, this is what basically our rules, regulations, our bylaws, and just to kind of help guide them in regards to how the process works.
And a question that I don't know if any of you three covered it is, some people have issues about volunteering for things because they have to use their personal leave or vacation leave. Can one of you talk about how this is, you don't use your leave because they're governor appointed positions?
So for the actual boards, if it's an actual board and the position aligns with your work, then it wouldn't be, no leave would be required. The other is basically depending on your work and what the board's work is, you would have to work with your agency to see if it aligns with your actual work, and to make sure that there's no conflict, and that the responsibilities that you have at work and on the board basically can can provide you with provide you with the time to be able to participate without having to take any leave.
So it depends on which board or commission you're on and
Then the position.
if you would use your leave or not.
Correct. And a lot of but what I have seen is there are a lot of like agencies that when you do participate in boards and commissions, a lot of them will not have you take leave.
Okay. Personally for myself, just being on LLN, there's been times when I've had to take my vacation leave because I would talk to my boss, and if he felt it wasn't really related to, I forget now what we talked about, then I had to take leave. And I think a lot of agencies struggle with BRGs and having their staff attend those. But it sounds like maybe the boards and commissions is also similar depending on what board and commission you are interested in.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, Vita, I want to jump back to the earlier question too about mentorship and other opportunities there. I really do want to prop up the work that people like Maria do to bring someone on board and provide that support system that exists before you join that board. That board has a history, it has infrastructure, and it has good people. I would assume. I don't know every board, but I know I know the Commission on Hispanic Affairs, and I know that their staff and their board members are good people that want to have more insight, more perspective, more networking possibilities, more contacts with the community. And that board, therefore, is going to take it upon itself to make sure that the details of actually serving on that board is not what, sort of is an impediment for the person joining. There should be no reason why the Open Public Meetings Act would interfere with you wanting to participate in the substantive work that the board is doing. The infrastructure there will help you with that to understand what that is. And those are the kinds of things that are there for you already. And when you're there, you're going to make friends, you're going to make contacts. And I learned so much from some of my board members, one of whom was, a longtime employee of the state. And she just knew everything about all of the inner workings of the state. I would have never known that. So I had a great opportunity to share what I knew about tax with people who were coming up, who are new and didn't know as much about the Board of Tax Appeals role in the tax world. And they had so much to share with me about their prior experiences. So it's a really great opportunity, and you're going to get to know people. And yeah, I'm just really pleased that there are mentorship opportunities. And Maria, I don't know if you wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Yes, I did. Thank you. I wanted to go back to that. So from our perspective, I'm always open and available to chat with folks that are interested in serving. What I normally do is take some time, whatever time is needed, with folks and go over our mission, go over how we work, go over what our commission needs are and what our gaps are, and then identify, maybe gaps that person can fill. Sometimes the conversation leads to, well, I don't have that much time actually to be a full commissioner, but I actually really just want to volunteer. And so at this point, we do have conversations as to how to meaningfully involve folks if they don't feel like they have the time to commit to being a commissioner. Every single board, every single commission is different. And so I would encourage to reach out to the staff that are staffing those boards and commissions and just to ask the question, I'm really interested in the work that you do. I have these skills, do you have some time to chat with me? I don't have a formal mentoring process for folks that are interested, but once commissioners are appointed, we definitely, we're a state agency. And so, there's some folks that have never been in an agency and don't know about the OPMA and our email and how, that everything is public record. And I sit down and make sure that they understand that, but then also understand what our culture is here at the commission, so that it's not a complete shock when, not that it's, a bad culture, but it's not a shock, right? When they have their first commission meeting, they're like, I don't know anybody, especially now that we're in a virtual setting.
One thing that I wanted to thank you, Maria, was going back to Alex, something that he shared with me when I met with him about boards and commissions one-on-one. And also something that Alfie mentioned is that we assume because we're Hispanic or Latino or whatever, that we should automatically rush to those kind of boards and commissions. But what we would like to see is like close to equal representation in other boards and commissions that do not have or are lacking the Latino Hispanic representation perspectives kind of thing. Maybe Alex can or Amber can say more to that, but that's what we're trying to get out there too.
Well, definitely like our college boards. I mean, that's a big one. That we don't really have representation. We want representation of the Latino community because, again, a lot of our students are Latinos. Mm-hmm. So we do want representation on there for the higher education. Also, medical commissions, Department of Health commissions, even the commission for like a building code council. Commissions like that, we need representation everywhere, not just the Commission on Hispanic Affairs, it's all of our commissions. So it's one of those where we need to put our voice all throughout everything that we have here.
Yes.
Yeah, precisely. And the other thing, just add to that, Jovita, really quickly, is that you may not, as a Latino or Latina, have that much interest in certain civil rights issues. I mean, maybe that's something you do on the side, but maybe you're really interested in forestry, and there's nothing that we lose and we gain everything by having more diversity on a forestry board as well. And so go figure out what you like the most, and there's a place for you there too. Yes. And there are lots of people that want to do the civil rights and promote those issues. And so if that's not you, but you want to be somewhere else, you should still throw your name in the ring. And Amber will, as she says, I mean, she does such a great job of finding opportunities for people. And we need those applications. We need the volume of applications coming through the door, or else Amber can't do it. I mean, there's nothing to do if there's nothing there to pull from, right? So
yeah, there's many interesting boards and commissions. I've looked at them many times. I just have not started the process, but
is there time? Can I ask a really quick question?
Uh-huh.
So what I'm hearing is that maybe a process might be like what to do might be to go to the general site, look at the different areas. Number two, look at the outreach report. And then number three, contact the commission to speak with somebody there for more in-depth questioning. Does that sound anywhere near right?
Yes, the outreach shows like the current opportunities, but it's also one of those where you can apply at any time to any of the boards. You don't have to wait for the opportunities to come up. It's definitely apply, because you just never know when someone might step away from their position. So then that opening comes up right away. So, hey, let's review your application. So we never have like a set time limit of when we close the applications. It's go in, apply at any time. It is correct. So I definitely recommend do your research, go to the Gov website for boards and commissions, do your research, also go to the board website itself. If need be, also attend one of their meetings just to kind of just see roughly how it goes and if it's something that sparks your interest. And then definitely, I would say apply and then reach out to the actual board.
No, that's good. Thank you.
I also have a quick question before we go. I know we are 1 p.m. But I just wanted a quick question about what Jovita mentioned about taking leave to go to the meetings. What is the average time commitments for these boards and commissions? Is it per week, per month? What are we looking for on average?
So roughly the average for boards and commissions, depending on the board, there's some boards that meet every month. And usually if they meet every month, it could be anywhere between like a 2 to like maybe 4, even 6-hour meeting. There's others that meet quarterly, and those tend to be anywhere between, again, depending on the commission, can be anywhere between 2 to 3 hours. There are some commissions that meet during the week, and then there's other commissions that meet on weekends. It just depends on the commission. So it roughly can be, you know, quarterly. There's some of them that meet annually, and then there's others that meet only when there's like an emergency. So, and some of them haven't even met like at all. So that's great. But it's one of those where it depends on the board. So it can be monthly, quarterly, twice a year, or once a year, or if ever.
Good to know. Thank you.
Good to know. Well, thank you. We've come to the end here and we're a little over, but I wanted to say thank you to the panel and also thank you to the attendees. I think we got the questions answered that I could see on the chat that came up. But thank you to everyone for participating, and we will see if we get any people interested, and hopefully you guys will get some names, some phone calls and stuff like that, hopefully.
And Jovita, before we go, if the people on this call aren't that interested, at least you could try and tell some of the other people that you know, just, you know, funnel them back to us. If there's any interest in anyone that you know, funnel them our way, because we'll help them. So. And
LLN can get you, I didn't put individual contact information for Maria, Ale, and Ambar, but we can get you in touch with him.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. We went over 2-3 minutes, but thanks again. I think it was a great discussion.
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.